What has changed in the world of Bitcoin since the last time we spoke? We've spoken. We hung out in Vegas, which was great. I had a great time with you. And but what has changed in the world of Bitcoin since the last time?
Well, it's been about a year and a half almost, and so much happening in the meantime. We had a pretty slow 2015, and 2016 picked up again. 2015 still coming off a slow and gradual drop in the price. People were very reluctant and skeptical. The media was constantly bashing Bitcoin. And then at the same time, we saw this really interesting phenomenon where the banks started getting interested in this thing. But not Bitcoin itself. No, the blockchain, the technology behind Bitcoin. Which is rather amusing. I look at that a bit as if, the Horse Buggy Association of America is going, oh, we like this automobile thing you've designed, but we have a very big investment in hay and horses and stables and veterinarians. So we're going to use the technology behind the automobile, the pneumatic tire, and we're going to revolutionize horse buggies.
But in all fairness, I think what you're saying is hilarious. But in all fairness, it is a weird thing to invest in, like to go all in on Bitcoin. I mean, I know you do it, but you also make all of your money this way, and this is, you're a proselytizing person when it comes to Bitcoin, right? For good reason. But for the average person, say, who's saved up actual cash money their whole life and is involved in this established system of money, to throw all their money into Bitcoin,
that would be insane.
You watch the money fluctuate; it goes up and it goes down. Well, I'm glad you said that it would be insane.
No, that would be a terrible idea.
Right, but don't you think that's probably why the media bashes it and why banks are just looking at it going, like people see that there's a growing number of people that are using it for transactions. There's Bitcoin ATMs now, and people are using it to purchase things. There's several companies that accept Bitcoin for products, for actual real physical products. But
yeah, but I mean, it's not an investment, and it shouldn't be treated as an investment.
I mean, I don't even mean like as an investment. I mean as like the primary source of money. If you decided to take all of your money, not as an investment, but just say, I'm going to live off of Bitcoin. I'm going to spend Bitcoin. But like your money's going to go up and down. Like
that's going to be really
radically
hard, especially if you're accustomed to privileged banking. Like if you have the kind of banking that we have in this country, if you actually have access to that, and you have a nice Visa debit card, and you don't pay account fees, and your money doesn't get confiscated by a dictator too often, and you can earn your money and interact with other people, then why would you use Bitcoin? The simple answer is that's not really the use case. But there are lots of people around the world who simply don't have access to that. And for them, in many cases, Bitcoin is the stable currency. Ask an Argentinian, a Venezuelan, a Brazilian, a Cypriot, a Greek, and the list goes on and on and on, whether they're worried about volatility in Bitcoin. And in many cases, if they've heard of it, if they've used it, that's the stable currency. Their national currency is far, far worse. Right?
Did you say Brazil?
Yeah, Brazil has had massive devaluation in the last year.
How much devaluation? Because I know that they have experienced some sort of a really radical economic downturn, which is really interesting because a few years ago when we first started going into Brazil, their economy was booming. Right. I'm saying the UFC.
Yeah, they're in a currency crisis right now. Massive currency crisis.
What's going on?
Well, apart from the political crisis that's going on, and I won't speak for that because I'm not a Brazilian, but they've had impeachment proceedings. They just impeached their president. There's been a lot of economic difficulty with the country, and I think their currency has devalued almost 30% in the last year, 20 or 30%, some staggering amount. Currencies don't move like that. Mainstream national currencies that have very large economies behind them simply don't move like that. We've seen it happen only a couple of times. We've seen it happen in Greece and Cyprus during the economic crisis. We saw it happen in Britain during Brexit, and we've seen it in places like Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina, and places like that.
How much currency how much of a percentage did Britain lose during Brexit?
Almost 20% in a day.
Wow.
And three things responded to that in the opposite direction: gold, the Japanese yen, and Bitcoin. heading in the exact opposite direction. Bitcoin climbed 20% that day almost.
Really? So did Britain rebound?
It did a bit, but it's still in historic lows, multi-decade lows. So they took a really big hit. And what we've seen again and again is at times of crisis, we see this pattern repeating where people use Bitcoin as a safe haven investment to get money out of national currencies, especially where there are very strict currency capital controls. So one of the reasons we've seen Bitcoin, probably one of the reasons we've seen a lot of activity with Bitcoin in China is because of currency controls. Every time the yuan, the Chinese currency, devalues against the dollar, and it's done so, I think, 4 times in the last year, every time there's a massive uptick in Bitcoin buying in China. So people are parking the money in Bitcoin or using it to convert it to other currencies and get money out of the country.
So what is the biggest fluctuation that Bitcoin has had?
Well, it depends whether you look at it on a monetary basis or on a percentage basis. If you look at the movements now, it can go up 30, 40, even $100 in a day, which seems like a lot. But as a percentage, the biggest fluctuations it had were in 2010 and 2011, when it rose from under $1 to over $30 and then back down to under $1 in a period of a couple of months.
Now, for people who don't understand what this means, when you're saying it $100 or $1 or $30, like what is that in relationship to?
1 Bitcoin.
1 Bitcoin equals $30.
It did in 2011.
And what does it equal right now?
$617.
$617? Mm-hmm. Jesus.
It was about $230 at the beginning of this year. So it's seen a massive ramp up and a renewal of interest.
Okay, so massive ramp up, but like what's the fluctuation? So if it's at 616, is that what you said?
Yeah, it's tripled since the beginning of the year almost.
Is it possible that it could drop to like 200 tomorrow?
Yes.
See, that scares the shit out of people.
Yes, and which is why, but here's the truth. Over the 7 years that it's existed, the volatility as a percentage has been going down every single year. So as the economy gets bigger, the bigger it is, the more stable it is. It doesn't get buffeted around, right? It's just like a very large boat doesn't get pushed around by the waves. Bitcoin is like a zodiac next to the US dollar's Titanic. And the little zodiac's bouncing up and down on the waves a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And it might be uncomfortable at times. Of course, if you're heading to an iceberg, you want to be in the thing that can actually turn on a dime.
That's a good way to look at it. I don't know if it's a fair analogy, but it's a good way to look at it.
It's volatile. And that's part of the fact that a $10 to $12 billion economy stretched across the entire globe is a small economy as a currency.
Now, in the interest of making this a standalone podcast, so people are not going to go back and listen to all the other podcasts that we've done, explain very briefly, if you could, what is Bitcoin and how does it work?
I'm glad I have this opportunity to do it again, because every time we have a new audience. So Bitcoin is internet money. It's a system of money that exists on the internet, was created on the internet, and it allows you to send and receive value the same way you can send and receive an email anywhere in the world, instantaneously, without intermediaries. And that's kind of what you see at first glance. Behind that, it's a whole platform. It is, as the title of the book says, the Internet of Money. It is a set of protocols that allow you to basically exchange value with other people. But you can do a lot more with it than just that. Most people will use it as a currency. It's basically money that you can transmit from your smartphone to somebody else's smartphone directly, just like cash, but electronic. And the thing about it that's unique is that it's not owned by any corporation, any bank, or any government, just like the web isn't owned by anyone, or email isn't owned by anyone. And there's lots of companies that can send and receive email. There's lots of companies that can set up websites. There's a lot of companies that can set up applications that use Bitcoin.